Rain pelted my face as security gripped my elbows, marching me across the parking lot like a criminal. Through the glass walls of the break room, I could see them all raising crystal flutes, laughing around her. Brooke, with her perfect smile and Harvard degree. Colorful balloons bobbed against the ceiling tiles, while my personal items sat pathetically in a soggy cardboard box under my arm. I caught Elton's eye, my boss of 3 years, as he lifted his glass higher in a theatrical toast. His mouth formed words I could read even through the streaked glass and pouring rain. She'll fix your mess. 3 years. 1,095 days of missed sleep, skipped meals, and solving impossible traffic flow equations while they gradually eliminated my entire support team. 3 years of creating something revolutionary that would transform urban mobility forever. We're pursuing alternative methodologies, Elton had announced 30 minutes earlier, sliding an empty box across his glass desk. Someone with, shall we say, more conventional approaches. I didn't plead, didn't scream, just nodded mechanically while something vital inside me crumpled like aluminum foil. 3 years of my life, my brilliance, my actual blood and sweat, dismissed with corporate pleasantries and passive voice constructions. The security guard, Dennis, who used to smile at me every morning, now avoided my eyes as he watched me toss my drenched box into the passenger seat of my 10-year-old hatchback. Protocol, he mumbled, almost apologetically. I sat in my car watching the celebration continue through the rain-blurred windows. They'd been grooming Brooke for months, the rising star with impressive credentials who questioned my methods during every meeting. Wouldn't a traditional framework be more sustainable? She'd ask, never having faced the real-world chaos of an actual traffic grid under stress. I turned the key, and my car sputtered to life. Conventional approaches, traditional frameworks. These were code for, we don't understand your genius, so we're replacing you with something more familiar. The highway stretched before me as my windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour. I'd pour everything into that traffic system, my creativity, my intuition, my very essence. And now someone else would claim it. Wait, before I continue this story, I need to check something with you. If you're finding this tale of corporate betrayal interesting so far, show your support by hitting that like button right now. Drop a comment if you've ever felt undervalued at work, and make sure you're subscribed to catch the rest of this wild ride. Trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. My name is Zephyr, and until 40 minutes ago, I was the lead engineer for one of the most ambitious urban traffic optimization systems ever created. Not the type you'd notice from your morning commute. This was the invisible architecture that made sure emergency vehicles always found clear paths, that rush hour flowed instead of stopped, that a city of 2 million people could move like a living organism rather than a congested mess. I didn't look the part of a brilliant engineer. At 32, with unruly auburn hair I rarely bothered to style and a preference for comfort over corporate fashion, I was easy to underestimate. My colleagues learned quickly that my mind functioned differently, seeing patterns where others saw chaos, sensing the rhythm of traffic flow like others might hear music. The apartment was dark when I arrived home. No pets, no plants, no waiting partner, just the hollow echo of my wet shoes on hardwood floors. I'd given everything to that job, to that system, to solving problems no one else could solve. My social life had withered like neglected houseplants. My dating apps gathered digital dust. My family had stopped expecting me at gatherings. It wasn't supposed to end this way. 6 months earlier, things had been different. My project, my beautiful, complex, revolutionary project, had received glowing preliminary reviews. City officials had marveled at the early simulations showing 30% reductions in emergency response times. This could save lives, the mayor had said, her eyes wide with genuine wonder. How did you do it? I couldn't fully explain. The system worked because I'd spent 3 years learning invisible patterns, adjusting for weather variations, crowd psychology, historical data anomalies. I coded my intuition into the system, making thousands of micro-adjustments daily that no instruction manual could capture. Then Elton hired Brooke, just to lighten your workload, he'd assured me with that thin smile that never reached his eyes. The board wants additional perspectives. Brooke with her crisp blazers and flawless PowerPoints. Brooke who had theories about everything but had built nothing. Brooke who gradually appeared in meetings I wasn't invited to, who somehow had access to my preliminary designs, who smiled sympathetically when I worked late. You should take better care of yourself, she'd say, while quietly cataloging my methods, my insights, my breakthroughs. The first night after my dismissal, my phone remained silent. The second day, too. They were doubtless celebrating their brilliant personnel decision. The heart of their operation, my creation, was now in Brooke's manicured hands. I sat on my balcony that second night, watching the city lights flicker through the clearing rain. 3 years of my life, erased with corporate platitudes and a cheap champagne toast to my replacement. I'd been a fool to believe my brilliance would protect me, that creating something irreplaceable would make me irreplaceable. Sleep evaded me. I paced my apartment like a ghost, touching books I'd never had time to read, opening cupboards filled with quick meals and protein bars. Who was I without my work? What remained of Zephyr when the project that consumed her was taken away? Dawn broke on the third day, and I was making bitter coffee when it began. My phone lit up, vibrated. Brooke's name appeared on the screen. I watched it ring until it stopped. 3 minutes later, another call, then another. By noon, I'd counted 7 missed calls, each separated by increasingly shorter intervals. By evening, the count had reached 12. No voicemails, no texts, just desperate, persistent calling. At midnight, as I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, surrounded by old notebooks, the physical artifacts of my thought processes, the 19th call came through. I watched my phone vibrate against the hardwood, imagining Brooke's panic as she faced tomorrow's implementation deadline. The system would run, then gradually deteriorate as real-world complexity overwhelmed her conventional approaches. I let a smile spread across my face for the first time in days, because what they never understood, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was that my traffic system wasn't just code and algorithms. It was me, my way of seeing the world, my patterns of thought translated into digital form. The system worked because I worked, because I'd poured my unique perception into every line, every function, every decision tree. My notebooks contained equations and diagrams, sure, but not the invisible connections only I could see. That night, I finally slept soundly, phone silent beside me. Morning brought 27 missed calls. Morning brought 27 missed calls. I made coffee and watched sunrise paint my sparse living room gold. For the first time in years, I had nowhere to be. No deadlines crushing my chest. No midnight coding sessions fueled by energy drinks and desperation. Just emptiness stretching before me like an unfamiliar landscape. My phone buzzed again. Not Brooke this time, but Iris, the only junior engineer who'd survived the team optimization 6 months ago. I hesitated, then answered. Zephyr? Her voice was hushed, urgent. It's falling apart. The entire North Quadrant grid locked up yesterday afternoon. Ambulances couldn't get through. They had to dispatch helicopters for 3 separate emergencies. I said nothing, just listened to her rapid breathing. Brooke keeps trying to recalibrate using standard parameters, but it's making everything worse. Elton's losing his mind. The mayor called twice yesterday. That sounds challenging, I replied, my voice neutral. Challenging? It's a nightmare. The board called an emergency meeting. The city's threatening to terminate the contract. Iris paused. They need you. No, they fired me, I corrected, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. They escorted me out while celebrating my replacement. They don't need me. They're experiencing consequences. Zephyr, please. Real people are suffering. That landed like a punch to my stomach. Real people. Not just Elton with his smug smile. Not just Brooke with her stolen position. Ordinary citizens trying to navigate their lives. I closed my eyes. I have to go, Iris. Wait. I ended the call, set my phone down gently, and walked to the window. The city sprawled below, my city, with its unique rhythm and flow, its complex network of human movement that I'd spent years learning to understand. People were suffering because of corporate arrogance. My doorbell rang an hour later. I knew who it would be before I opened it. Elton stood there, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. His silver hair stuck up oddly on one side, his tie was loosened, and deep circles shadowed his eyes. Zephyr, he said, attempting an ingratiating smile that didn't match his desperate eyes. May I come in? I didn't move from the doorway. Why? We need to talk. Professionally. I don't work for you anymore. Remember the security escort? The champagne toast to my replacement? He winced. That was unfortunate timing. Was it? Or was it exactly what you intended? To humiliate me on my way out? Look, we're facing some technical challenges with the implementation. Brooke is brilliant, but she's encountering some unexpected variables in your architecture. I leaned against the doorframe. My mess, you mean? Isn't that what you called it while raising your glass? His facade cracked slightly. I never said. I read lips, Elton. A skill I developed during all those meetings where you talked over me. He straightened, switching tactics. The city is experiencing severe disruption. Emergency services are compromised. This is bigger than professional disagreements. True, I nodded. Sounds like an excellent opportunity for Brooke to demonstrate those conventional approaches you were so excited about. Zephyr, please, we're prepared to offer you a consulting contract. Triple your former salary. Just help us stabilize the system. I studied the man who'd dismissed 3 years of my life as a mess, who'd watched me be escorted out like a criminal, who'd toasted my replacement before my desk was even cold. No, just like that? Just like that. The same way you fired me. His face hardened. This isn't about your wounded pride. Lives are literally at stake. They always were. That's why I worked 60-hour weeks perfecting that system while you cut my team to improve quarterly numbers. That's why I missed my sister's wedding, optimizing emergency vehicle routing. That's why I skipped holidays and vacations and sleep. My voice remained steady. You never cared about lives when it was me sacrificing everything for them. I'll go to the board, he threatened. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I smiled then. Go ahead. Tell them exactly how badly you mismanaged this transition. Explain why you fired the one person who understood the system without ensuring knowledge transfer. I'm sure they'll be impressed with your leadership. Color drained from his face. What do you want? For you to leave my apartment. After Elton left, I turned my phone off and took a long, hot shower. Water washed over me as I processed what Iris had said. Real people suffering. That truth hovered like a weight. Whatever Elton and Brooke deserved, the city didn't. I spent that afternoon walking through downtown, observing firsthand what had happened to my system. Traffic lights changed in nonsensical patterns. Vehicles bunched at intersections. Horns blared continuously in a symphony of frustration. On one corner, I watched an elderly woman wait 7 full minutes for a pedestrian signal that never came. Local news vans clustered near City Hall. A reporter stood before a camera gesturing dramatically. Day 5 of what officials are now calling the grid crisis, with no resolution in sight. By evening, I'd made my decision. Not for Elton, not for the company, for the city. I called Iris. I need specifics. What exactly is happening with the system? Her relief was audible. Brooke tried implementing her standardized algorithm package. Everything ran fine in simulation, but collapsed under real conditions. She can't figure out why your code works in some sectors, but not others. Why some intersections adapt while others freeze. Because she's looking for consistent rules where there aren't any, I explained. The system doesn't follow textbook principles. It's adaptive, organic. That's what I tried telling her. She keeps saying your documentation is insufficient. I laughed bitterly. My documentation is meticulous. She just doesn't understand what she's reading. Will you help? Please? Even just advice? I hesitated. I'll think about it. The next morning, I received a text from an unknown number. An address, a time, and 5 words. Please, for the city. Mayor Vivienne. I recognized the address. A small cafe far from corporate headquarters. Neutral ground. Smart. Mayor Vivienne looked exhausted when I arrived. The weight of a paralyzed city evident in the new lines on her face. She stood as I approached her corner table. Thank you for coming, she said, extending her hand. I haven't agreed to anything, I reminded her, sitting down. I know, she signaled for coffee, but you're here, which means you care what happens to this city. The same way you cared when you designed a system that could have transformed urban mobility forever. Could have? Your former employer is considering shutting it down completely, reverting to the old system. I felt an unexpected pang at the thought of my creation being discarded. That would be unfortunate. It would be catastrophic, she corrected. Emergency response times are up 40%. We've had 2 traffic fatalities that might have been prevented with faster ambulance arrival. Schools can't run buses on schedule. People can't get to work. The server delivered our coffee. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, buying time. I understand you were treated poorly, the mayor continued, her voice gentle but direct. I witnessed your dedication during development. I saw the brilliance of what you built, and I was shocked to learn you'd been removed from the project. Did they tell you I was removed, or did they say I left? She met my eyes. They said you'd moved on to other opportunities. I knew it was corporate language for something else. They fired me without warning, replaced me with someone who questioned my methods without understanding them, celebrated as security marched me out. She winced. I'm sorry, truly. But right now, 2 million people are suffering because the system you built, the system that worked beautifully, is failing without you. It's failing because they thought anyone could take over without understanding the underlying approach, because they valued credentials over proven results, I know, she interrupted, and they were catastrophically wrong. But punishing them is punishing everyone else too. I stared into my coffee, conflicted. The mayor reached across the table, not quite touching my hand. Help us fix this. Not for them, for the city. I can hire you directly as a municipal consultant. Bypass the company entirely. They own the system. They licensed it to us. And right now, they're in breach of contract by providing non-functional infrastructure. We have legal grounds. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of something beyond anger. A possibility. I'd need certain guarantees, I said slowly. Complete creative control. My name on everything. The patents, the white papers, everything. And I choose my team. Mayor Vivian's eyes widened slightly. You've thought about this. I'm always thinking. It's both my greatest strength and the reason I don't sleep much. She nodded. I'll make it happen. As I walked home from that meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from Iris. Emergency board meeting tomorrow. Elton saying system needs complete rebuild. Brooke blaming sabotage in your code. Help! I smiled to myself. Sabotage. Of course. Because it couldn't possibly be that Brooke, with all her prestigious degrees and conventional thinking, simply couldn't comprehend what I'd built. It had to be deliberate, undermining rather than her own limitations. That night, as I organized my notes and prepared for what would come next, I received one final call from Brooke herself. I answered on the last ring. Zephyr. Her voice was tight, controlled. We need to talk. We're talking now, I replied. I know what you did. The accusation in her tone was unmistakable. What exactly did I do, Brooke? You know exactly what. The missing protocols, the undocumented overrides, the intentionally misleading variable names. You set me up to fail. I laughed, genuinely amused. Is that what you think? That I somehow anticipated being fired and deliberately created a system no one else could run? Then explain why nothing works the way it should. Maybe it works exactly as it should. Maybe you just don't understand how it should work. The silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke, her voice smaller. I need your help. I need your help. 3 small words that must have cost Brooke's pride dearly. I savored the moment, thinking of her standing in the wreckage of what she'd so confidently believed she could handle. Interesting, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. A week ago, you were explaining to the board how my approach was needlessly complicated. I was wrong, she admitted, the words tight and clipped. The system it's beyond conventional understanding. No, it's beyond your understanding. There's a difference. Her breathing changed, a sharp inhale that told me she was struggling to maintain composure. People are suffering, Zephyr. Whatever you think of me, they don't deserve this. The same argument the mayor had made. The same moral weight pressed upon my shoulders. I'll meet with you, I said finally. Not at the office. The public library, main branch, 3rd floor study room. 10 tomorrow morning. Thank you, she breathed. I'll bring everything. Don't bring anything, I interrupted. No laptops, no tablets, just yourself and a pen. I ended the call and stood by my window, watching night settle over the struggling city. Streetlights blinked on in irregular patterns where my system should have been coordinating them perfectly with traffic flow. In the distance, sirens wailed. Another emergency vehicle fighting through congestion my system should have cleared. Sleep evaded me that night, not from stress, but from ideas flowing too rapidly to contain. By dawn, I'd filled a fresh notebook with calculations, diagrams, and a plan that went far beyond fixing what was broken. The library was nearly empty when I arrived. Brooke was already there, sitting rigidly in the study room, hair pulled back severely, dark circles shadowing her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sympathy. Almost. Thank you for coming, she said, standing as I entered. I set my notebook on the table. Let's be clear. I'm not here to save your career. I understand. Do you? You took my job. You celebrated while security escorted me out. You told everyone you could fix my mess. She had the decency to look away. It wasn't. I didn't know they were letting you go that day. But you knew they were letting me go. Her silence was confirmation enough. Tell me what's happening with the system, I said, opening my notebook. For the next hour, Brooke detailed the cascading failures. The more she spoke, the more evident it became that she'd attempted to impose textbook solutions on my organic architecture, like trying to control a living ecosystem with mechanical rules. It's not rational, she concluded, frustration evident. Sectors that should behave identically respond completely differently to the same inputs. Because they're not identical, each sector has its own personality. Traffic grids don't have personalities. Mine do. I turned my notebook toward her. You're treating the system like it's built on static algorithms when it's actually responsive to thousands of subtle variables you're not even measuring. She stared at my diagrams. This isn't in any of the documentation, because it can't be documented in traditional ways. It's not about rules, it's about relationships between factors that most engineers don't consider important. Confusion creased her brow. Like what? Like the fact that the North Quadrant moves differently on baseball game days, even when accounting for stadium traffic, because drivers' psychology changes. Or that the downtown grid needs different timing when it rains, because pedestrians create unique patterns depending on where awnings are located. That's impossible to systematize, not impossible, just beyond conventional approaches. I closed my notebook, which is why you're failing. Her face hardened. So you'll help? I haven't decided. What would it take? Name your price. I studied her, this woman who had so confidently stepped into my position, who had dismissed years of my work with a casual certainty that she could do better. I don't want money, I said finally. I want truth. What does that mean? It means before I help anyone, I want the board to understand exactly what happened, how my system actually works, why it failed under your management. The full, unvarnished truth. She paled. You want me to admit failure. I want accountability. From everyone involved. Brooke stared at her hands. Elton will never agree. He's telling the board your system was fundamentally flawed from the beginning. That's why he brought me in. Then I guess the city stays paralyzed. I stood to leave, but Brooke reached across the table, not quite touching my arm. Wait, what if I tell the truth without him? At tomorrow's emergency board meeting, I paused. Why would you do that? Because you're right. Because I was wrong. Because this isn't about careers anymore. It's about responsibility. I didn't entirely believe her sudden moral clarity, but I nodded anyway. Tomorrow's meeting. I'll be watching what happens very carefully. As I left the library, my phone rang. Mayor Vivienne. I've secured approval for your consulting contract, she said without preamble. Direct with the city, bypassing the company entirely. You can start immediately. There's something happening tomorrow first, I replied. A board meeting I need to see the results of. A board meeting I need to see the results of. We don't have time for corporate politics, Zephyr. The situation is deteriorating hourly. 24 hours won't make a difference to the structural problems, but it might make all the difference to what happens after we fix them. As a pause. You have a plan. I always have a plan. Some are just less conventional than others. That evening, Iris called again. Brooke's been in closed-door meetings all afternoon. Something's happening. Good, I replied. Is it? Elton's telling everyone the entire project needs to be scrapped. 3 years of work. Gone. My work, I reminded her. And it's not going anywhere. The next morning, I dressed carefully in the one professional outfit I owned. A charcoal gray suit I'd worn to my grandmother's funeral 3 years earlier. I pulled my unruly hair into a neat bun, applied minimal makeup, and slipped on the pearl earrings my mother had given me for graduation. Today wasn't about fitting corporate aesthetics. It was about power. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 9:30, I walked into the company headquarters like I still belonged there. The security guard, not Dennis, looked up in surprise but said nothing as I headed for the elevator. The executive floor was hushed, tense. Through glass walls, I could see board members already gathering in the main conference room. Elton stood at the head of the table, gesturing emphatically. Brooke sat to his right, staring at her folded hands. I didn't enter. Instead, I settled into a chair in the adjacent waiting area, directly in Brooke's line of sight when she eventually looked up. Our eyes met. Something passed between us, an understanding perhaps, or a challenge. The board chairman called the meeting to order. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the room. Elton's practiced confidence, the board members' concern, Brooke's rigid posture. 10 minutes in, Elton projected graphs showing system failures. 15 minutes in, he explicitly blamed my experimental, undocumented methodology for the collapse. 20 minutes in, Brooke stood up. I leaned forward, watching her lips as she began speaking. The board members' expressions shifted from concern to surprise to something approaching shock. Elton attempted to interrupt, but the chairman silenced him. Brooke kept speaking, occasionally glancing toward where I sat. Whatever she was saying, it wasn't the narrative Elton had prepared. At exactly 10:37 a.m., the boardroom door opened. A security guard approached me. "Miss Zephyr, the board has requested your presence." I nodded, stood, smoothed my jacket, and followed him into the lion's den. Silence fell as I entered. Every head turned toward me, some curious, some hostile, some unreadable. "Thank you for joining us," the chairman said, his tone carefully neutral. "Miss Brooke has been sharing some revelatory information about your traffic system design." I nodded but said nothing. "She suggests that the current implementation failures are not due to flaws in your original design, but rather misapplication of conventional algorithms to your, what did you call it? Adaptive architecture," Brooke supplied, not meeting Elton's glare. "Yes," the chairman continued. "She further suggests that you alone fully understand how to operate the system properly, and that your dismissal was precipitous." I turned to Elton, whose face had flushed an unhealthy shade of red. "Precipitous," I repeated. An interesting choice of words for firing the one person who understood the multi-million-dollar system you'd contracted to deliver to the city. "Now see here," Elton began, but the chairman raised a hand. "Miss Zephyr, the situation is critical. The city is threatening legal action for breach of contract. Our reputation is suffering immeasurable damage. We need solutions, not recriminations." "I agree completely," I replied calmly, "which is why I've accepted a position as direct consultant to the mayor's office, effective immediately." The room erupted in confused murmurs. The chairman banged a small gavel for order. "You've what?" Elton sputtered. "The city has exercised its contractual right to engage independent expertise when the primary contractor fails to deliver functional infrastructure," I explained. "Since you licensed my system to them but can no longer make it work, they've hired me to fix it." You can't," Elton stammered. "Actually, she can," interrupted a new voice. Mayor Vivienne stood in the doorway, flanked by her legal counsel. "As of 9 o'clock this morning, the city has formally notified your company of material breach. We're exercising our right to engage Miss Zephyr directly." The chairman's expression darkened. "This is highly irregular. So was firing the creator of a proprietary system without ensuring knowledge transfer," the mayor replied smoothly. "But here we are. My system will be fully operational within 72 hours, I added, "under my direct management, with my own team." "Your team?" Elton laughed harshly. "You don't have a team." "I will," I countered. "Starting with Iris, who I'm hiring away from you, effective today. Along with any other engineers who understand the value of adaptive thinking over conventional approaches. The revenge I'd planned, the moment I'd imagined since being marched past that champagne toast, wasn't what happened next. It wasn't watching Elton sputter ineffectively or seeing the board realize their catastrophic error. It wasn't even the mayor's perfectly timed entrance. The real revenge came 48 hours later, when my restored system silently, elegantly resumed functioning across the city. When emergency response times dropped back to record lows, when traffic flowed like water, finding its natural course. When the mayor held a press conference announcing the innovative architectural approach pioneered by municipal consultant Zephyr that would become a model for cities worldwide. The sweetest moment wasn't the job offers that flooded my inbox from companies who suddenly recognized my genius. It wasn't the industry recognition or the substantial consulting fees. It was the afternoon, exactly 1 month later, when I walked past my former company's headquarters on my way to the mayor's office. Through the glass lobby, I saw moving boxes and people clearing out desks. The city contract, their primary source of revenue, had been permanently reassigned to my newly formed Municipal Innovation Division. Near the entrance, looking shell-shocked, stood Elton, watching his empire crumble. Our eyes met through the glass. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just nodded once and continued walking. My team of brilliant, unconventional thinkers waiting for me at City Hall. Because true revenge isn't about destruction. It's about building something better from the ashes of what was taken from you. If you've made it to the end of this journey with me, you know what it feels like to be underestimated, dismissed, and then vindicated. Drop a comment sharing your own story of professional redemption. Like this video if you believe in the power of unconventional thinking. And subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over corporate toxicity. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's changing the entire game. The presentation slides glowed on my laptop screen at 2 a.m., reflecting in my exhausted eyes. My client retention strategy, a year of research, late nights, and canceled weekends, beautifully visualized in 32 meticulously crafted slides. I emailed the deck to my boss, Vesta, then closed my laptop with a satisfying click. Despite the exhaustion, I felt pride. This strategy would transform our company. 2 days later, walking past the glass-walled meeting room, I spotted Vesta presenting my slides to the executive team. She hadn't mentioned she'd be sharing my work today. Curious, I paused by the door, just out of sight. And that's why I developed this 3-tiered approach, Vesta was saying, gesturing to a graph I'd created. My strategy centers on identifying at-risk clients before they show obvious signs of leaving. My strategy, not our strategy. My strategy. The room erupted in applause. Our CEO, Griffith, stood up. Vesta, this is brilliant work. Exactly why you're heading to Cabo next week. You deserve to showcase this at the leadership retreat. My lungs felt suddenly empty. Leadership retreat? I hadn't heard about any retreat. The whole team's excited, Vesta replied, beaming. Beachfront accommodations, strategic planning by day, bonding by night. Griffith nodded. Best part of running this company is rewarding excellence. Everyone who contributed to our success this year will be there. I walked away before anyone noticed me, my face burning. If everyone who contributed was invited, where was my invitation? The answer came that afternoon in a carefully worded email from Vesta. Due to unfortunate budget constraints, we've had to reduce the Cabo retreat attendee list. While your contributions are valued, we can only bring department heads this year. Budget constraints. For a company that had just posted record profits. For a department where I'd personally generated 42% of the revenue. I typed a polite acknowledgement, my fingers trembling with rage. That might have been the end of it, if not for Wade's carelessness. Wade, our socially awkward IT director, accidentally included me in a forwarded email thread about pre-retreat logistics. Scrolling through the exchange, I found the real reason for my exclusion. From our CFO, Rene. Do we really need her there? She'll just challenge everything like last time. Vesta's reply, agreed. Let's blame budget cuts. Besides, your presentation using her research will go smoother without her interruptions. Griffith had chimed in. Good call. She's brilliant but difficult. We need team players, not questioners. I stared at those words until they blurred. Brilliant but difficult. Questioner, not a team player. These were the people I'd sacrificed my personal life for, the team I'd believed in. The retreat began on Monday. I watched it unfold through social media. Amber-filtered sunset photos beside infinity pools, champagne flutes raised in toasts, matching resort wear with embroidered company logos. Vesta posted a photo of herself holding a presentation clicker. Caption, about to share some game-changing innovation with the leadership team. Number, blessed number, innovation excellence. That night, scrolling through the retreat hashtag, I saw what broke me, a photo of the awards dinner schedule. Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Innovation Excellence Award. Vesta Martin, Client Retention Strategy Implementation. They were giving her an award. For my work, I threw my phone across the room and watched it bounce off the wall. My breathing came in sharp bursts. For 3 years, I'd given everything to this company. Missed my grandmother's funeral for a client emergency. Developed pneumonia from overwork, and still dialed into meetings from my hospital bed. Created strategies that increased our client retention by 38% year over year. And this was my reward. Exclusion, theft, erasure. I cleaned up the shards of my phone screen, mind racing. Direct confrontation would label me difficult. Apparently, I already had that reputation. Complaining to HR was pointless, they reported to Griffith. Quitting would only hurt me financially, especially with no immediate prospects. I needed a plan. something elegant yet devastating, something that would expose the truth while strengthening my position, not weakening it. Before we continue further, thank you for listening to my story. If you're enjoying it so far, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life corporate drama stories like mine. Your support means everything, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The revenge I'm about to describe might give you ideas for your own workplace challenges. Drop a comment about what you would have done in my situation. Now, back to how I handled these corporate thieves. My name's Marlo. I'm 32, analytical to a fault, and have built my career on anticipating problems before they arise. I grew up watching my mother work 3 jobs after my father left, which taught me self-reliance and a certain wariness about trusting others. I'm not naturally confrontational. I prefer solving problems through systems and strategy rather than direct conflict. That's what made me so good at my job, and also what made my current situation so painful. I joined the company fresh from graduate school, dazzled by Griffith's charismatic leadership and Vesta's apparent mentorship. For 3 years, I believed we were building something meaningful together. I thought my dedication was recognized, my voice valued. How naive that seems now. Vesta had always taken credit for team accomplishments, but subtly, adding her name to projects, speaking first in presentations. I'd ignored these warning signs, telling myself collaboration was complex and perception subjective. But this was different. This was theft, plain and simple. The client retention strategy had been my baby from conception. Last year, during our quarterly review, I'd identified a disturbing pattern of client departures. While our acquisition numbers looked impressive, we were hemorrhaging established clients at an alarming rate. Replacing them cost 5 times more than retaining them would have. When I presented these findings, Vesta had seemed dismissive. Clients come and go. That's business. But I couldn't let it go. On my own time, I began analyzing patterns in client departures. I created surveys for former clients, built predictive models, and developed a 3-tiered intervention system that could identify at-risk relationships months before traditional metrics would spot trouble. I presented my findings to Vesta privately first. This could transform our business model, I explained, showing her the projected savings. If we implement this strategy, we could increase profitability by 23% within 6 months. Her eyes had widened slightly, the only time I'd ever seen her surprised. This is comprehensive, she admitted. Let me think about how we position this to leadership. For months, I refined the strategy, creating implementation guides and training modules. When Vesta suggested I prepare a presentation for the executive team, I'd spent weeks perfecting those 32 slides. I'd believed this would be my moment to shine. Instead, I was home alone, watching my work being celebrated 3,000 miles away, with someone else's name attached. I poured myself a glass of wine and considered my options. Suddenly, inspiration struck, not from anger, but from something Griffith himself had said at last year's holiday party. In business, the winner isn't who throws the hardest punch, but who creates the most leverage. Leverage, that's what I needed. I opened my laptop and navigated to the profile of Imara Wilson, current head of strategy at our biggest competitor. We'd attended the same graduate program and occasionally exchanged industry insights. I'd always respected her integrity and straightforward approach. I drafted a careful email. Imara, I've developed something that might interest you. Would you be available for coffee tomorrow? She responded within minutes, suggesting a quiet cafe away from both our offices. The next morning, sitting across from Imara, I felt a strange calm. I want to be clear, I began. This meeting isn't about sharing proprietary information. It's about my future. I assumed as much, she replied, stirring her tea. You've always been ethical to a fault, Marlo. What's changed? I've created a client retention strategy that's already showing remarkable results. The initial implementation has reduced client departures by 38%. Her eyebrows rose. That's impressive. We've noticed your company's improvements in that area. The strategy is mine, every element of it, but it's being presented as my boss's work. In fact, right now, she's in Cabo accepting an award for it. Understanding dawned on Imara's face, and you're exploring options. I know what I'm worth, I said simply, and I know what my work is worth. Imara studied me. What exactly are you proposing? 2 things. First, I want to discuss potential opportunities at your company. Second, I have a rather unorthodox request about how you might extend that offer, should you decide to make one. I'm listening. I outlined my plan. By the time our coffee cups were empty, Imara was smiling. It's audacious, she admitted, but I like audacity backed by talent. Let me talk to our CEO. That afternoon, I received a calendar invitation for a video conference with Imara and her CEO, Leandro. The meeting lasted 2 hours. I presented a redacted version of my strategy, explaining the principles without revealing proprietary details. I answered their probing questions with confidence. By the end, Leandro was leaning toward his camera, energized. "We want you, Marlo," he said finally. "Your approach aligns perfectly with our new direction. Imara tells me you have some specific ideas about the offer delivery." I nodded. "The leadership team is in Cabo until Thursday. Tonight, at 7 p.m., they're holding an awards dinner where my boss will receive recognition for my strategy. I'd like your offer to arrive during that dinner." Leandro's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "You're not just looking for a job. You want to make a point." "I want the truth recognized," I corrected. "And yes, I want leverage." After some discussion, they agreed. Leandro even suggested enhancements to my plan that made it more impactful. That evening, I sat in my apartment, watching the clock. At exactly 7:03 p.m., my phone pinged with a notification. Package delivered. I closed my eyes and imagined the scene unfolding 3,000 miles away. I imagined the scene at the beachfront resort, the private dining room with its panoramic ocean view, tables adorned with tropical centerpieces, executives in resort casual attire raising champagne flutes. Vesta would be at the podium, her moment of glory, glass trophy gleaming under recessed lighting. 12 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Wade. "Marlo, what did you do?" His voice trembled. "I'm not sure what you mean," I replied calmly. His voice dropped to a whisper. "There's absolute chaos here." A courier interrupted Vesta's acceptance speech with a package for Griffith. It was a contract offer from Integrated Solutions for you, for 40% more than you make now, specifically to implement your client retention strategy. Your strategy, not Vesta's. I remained silent, letting him fill the void. Griffith's face went purple. Vesta dropped the award. It actually shattered. Then Leandro's letter explaining how they tracked the results of your strategy through industry metrics. Renee started yelling about confidentiality breaches. Vesta claimed you stole her work. His voice cracked. Griffith just kept asking why nobody told him you were the one who created the strategy. I made a non-committal sound. Interesting. Interesting? Everyone's losing their minds. Half the executives are defending you, saying they always knew you were the brains behind the operation. The other half are calling for your termination. Griffith locked himself in his suite with the contract and hasn't come out. "Thank you for letting me know, Wade." "That's it? That's all you have to say?" "What would you like me to say?" He hesitated. "Are you taking their offer?" "I haven't decided yet." "Marlo, what's your plan here?" I smiled to myself. I never blindly accept the first offer, Wade. That's poor negotiation strategy. After hanging up, I turned off my phone and slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The next morning, texts and emails flooded in, colleagues expressing shock, asking questions, taking sides. I responded to none of them. Instead, I put on my favorite power outfit, charcoal slacks, emerald blouse, structured blazer, and went to work, as usual. The office was practically empty, with everyone still in Cabo, creating an eerie quiet. I spent the day completing routine tasks, organizing files, and preparing a detailed transition document for all my projects, just in case. At 3:17 p.m., I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Flight lands at 7:30. Car will pick you up at 8:15. Dinner at 9. G." Griffith had cut his retreat short. Interesting. I replied simply, "I'll be there." The restaurant Griffith chose was the kind that didn't list prices on its menu. Dimly lit, with well-spaced tables ensuring privacy. He was already seated when I arrived, nursing what appeared to be whiskey. Neat. "Marlo," he said, standing briefly as I approached. "Griffith," I replied, taking my seat. He studied me intently. "I've had a very educational 24 hours. I imagine so." I maintained eye contact while a server poured water. After ordering, Griffith leaned forward. "Let's not waste time. I received quite a theatrical delivery yesterday." "So I heard." "You don't deny orchestrating it?" I tilted my head. "Would denying it make any difference?" He almost smiled. "No, It had your precision all over it. Perfectly timed, devastatingly effective. He swirled his whiskey. What I can't decide is whether you're brilliant or reckless. Why can't I be both? This time he did smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. The offer from Integrated Solutions is impressive. Leandro clearly values your abilities. Apparently, he recognizes who actually created the client retention strategy. Griffith flinched, just slightly, but enough to notice. About that, there seems to have been a misattribution. A misattribution, I repeated flatly. Is that what we're calling theft of intellectual property now? That's quite an accusation. I reached into my bag and pulled out the email thread Wade had accidentally forwarded me, printed and highlighted. I slid it across the table. Not an accusation, a fact. Griffith read it, his expression darkening. When he looked up, something had changed in his gaze. This doesn't look good. No, it doesn't. Not for Vesta, not for Renee, and certainly not for a CEO who endorsed erasing a key contributor to avoid dealing with someone brilliant but difficult. He winced. I should have verified who created the strategy. Yes, you should have. Our food arrived, creating a temporary reprieve. We both pretended to eat, moving food around our plates in the ancient ritual of uncomfortable business dinners. Finally, Griffith pushed his plate aside. What do you want, Marlowe? That's refreshingly direct. I'm a direct person when necessary. Funny. All this happened because people weren't direct with me. I dabbed my mouth with a napkin. I want recognition for my work. I want the Innovation Excellence Award officially transferred to me, with company-wide acknowledgement. I want a promotion to senior director, reporting directly to you, not Vesta. I want a 50% raise. That's 10% more than Integrated Solutions offered. And I want a guarantee that any future strategies I develop will be credited properly to me. Griffith's eyebrows rose incrementally with each demand. That's substantial. Less substantial than the 42% revenue I generated while being called difficult behind my back. He nodded slowly. And if I agree to these terms, then I stay, and you keep my client retention strategy instead of watching me implement it at your biggest competitor. And if I refuse, I smiled, then I accept Leandro's offer, and you explain to the board why you let a key strategic advantage walk out the door, because acknowledging my contribution was too inconvenient. Griffith studied me for a long moment. You've placed me in quite a bind. No, you placed yourself in this bind when you allowed my work to be stolen. He took a long sip of whiskey. I've never seen this side of you, Marlowe. That's because you've never truly seen me at all. You saw what was convenient, a workhorse who wouldn't complain when pushed aside, who would quietly accept being left behind while others celebrated her achievements. I leaned forward, but I'm done being invisible. Clearly, he signaled for the check. I need to make some calls. Of course. Take your time. I stood up. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to decide. After that, I notify Leandro of my acceptance. As I walked toward the door, Griffith called after me. Marlowe? For what it's worth, I've always respected your work. I just didn't realize how much of it was actually yours. I turned back. That's the problem, isn't it? You should have known. The night passed in a strange limbo. I didn't sleep, alternating between nervous energy and calm resolve. Had I pushed too far? Not far enough? Would Griffith cave to my demands or call my bluff? By 7 a.m., I was on my second cup of coffee, dressed for work, and prepared for either outcome. My phone rang at 8:17 a.m. I've talked with the board, Griffith said without preamble. We're prepared to meet all your terms, with one condition. I'm listening. I need you to handle this situation with discretion. The official story will acknowledge your work and transfer credit to you, but without explicitly stating that Vesta misrepresented herself. You want to save face for Vesta? After what she did, I want to protect the company's reputation. A public scandal helps no one. I considered this. What happens to Vesta? That's being handled internally. She'll no longer be your supervisor, obviously. Not good enough. I want her removed from any position where she oversees creative work or strategy development. She's demonstrated she can't be trusted with other people's intellectual property. Silence stretched between us. You drive a hard bargain, Marlowe. No, I drive a fair one. Another pause. Fine, it's done. The paperwork for your promotion and raise will be ready when you arrive. I'll announce the award correction at this morning's virtual all-hands meeting. I'll see you at the office. As I ended the call, a wave of vindication washed over me. but something nagged at the edges of my satisfaction. This victory felt too easy, too clean. Something wasn't right. When I arrived at the office, the atmosphere was tense. Colleagues who'd returned early from Cabo watched me with new eyes, some admiring, others wary. The paperwork waited on my desk as promised, but as I reviewed it, my unease grew. The promotion was there. The raise was there. But several clauses about confidentiality and public statements seemed deliberately broad, designed to silence me about what had happened. As I walked to Griffith's office to discuss these concerns, I passed the conference room and overheard raised voices. The door was slightly ajar. Can't let her dictate terms like this. It was Renee's voice. Give her what she wants now, sign the non-disparagement agreement, then phase her out slowly. 6 months from now, we relocate her position to the Singapore office. If she refuses to move, it's resignation on her terms, not termination. Griffith's response was too low to hear clearly. Renee continued, we need damage control. She embarrassed us in front of the entire leadership team. This can't go unpunished. I backed away quietly, mind racing. They were planning to agree to everything, then systematically push me out once the immediate threat passed. They hadn't learned a thing. I returned to my desk and picked up my phone. Leandro, it's Marlo. We need to talk. At 9 a.m. sharp, the company-wide video call began. I sat in my office, watching on my laptop as Griffith appeared on screen, his expression solemn. Good morning, everyone. I'm calling from headquarters, where I've returned early from our leadership retreat to address an important matter. As he spoke about correcting an oversight and properly attributing the client retention strategy to its true creator, I smiled to myself. Everything was going exactly according to plan, just not the plan they thought I was following. When the meeting ended, my colleagues stopped by my office one by one. Some offered genuine congratulations. Others performed awkward apologies for not realizing my contribution. A few just stared, reassessing me with newfound wariness. Vesta was conspicuously absent. According to office whispers, she'd been asked to take some time off pending a review. I knew better. They were simply keeping her away while they sorted out their damage control strategy. Griffith's executive assistant appeared at my door around noon. The executive team would like to welcome you properly. Dinner tomorrow night at the Lotus, 7 p.m. I smiled. I'll be there. But first, I had another dinner to attend. That evening, I met Leandro and Imara at a small restaurant across town. Their expressions were curious as I slid into the booth. So, Leandro began. Based on this morning's company-wide announcement, I assume you've decided to stay with your current employer? That's what they believe, I replied, unfolding my napkin. But I had an interesting revelation after our call this morning. I described overhearing Renee's plan to appease me temporarily before forcing me out. Imara shook her head. Classic corporate maneuvering. Give the troublemaker what they want publicly, then quietly eliminate them once the spotlight moves on. Exactly. So, I've reconsidered your offer. I removed a folder from my bag. Here's my counter offer. Leandro reviewed the document, eyebrows rising. This timeline is aggressive, necessarily so. I need to be officially employed by Integrated Solutions before tomorrow evening. That's less than 24 hours, Imara noted. Our HR department will have a meltdown. I have faith in your persuasive abilities. I took a sip of water. There's more. I'd like to bring 3 specific team members with me, people whose contributions have also been overlooked. Wade from IT, Zinnia from Data Analytics, and Archer from Client Services. The talent acquisition team will definitely have a meltdown, Leandro murmured, but he was smiling. All 4 of you? They're brilliant, undervalued, and loyal, not to the company, but to good work and fair treatment. Wade was the only person who warned me about what happened in Cabo. Zinnia helped me gather the data for my strategy, but received 0 recognition. Archer has implemented my recommendations flawlessly, despite having his budget repeatedly cut. A package deal, Imara mused, with one additional request. I outlined my plan for the following evening. When I finished, Leandro let out a low whistle. That's not burning bridges. That's napalming them from orbit. Too much? I asked. He grinned. Not at all. It's strategically brilliant. Ruthless, but brilliant. We'll make it happen, Imara promised. The next day passed in a blur of secret preparations. I signed my new employment contract, effective immediately, though I told no one at the office. I quietly removed personal items from my desk, transferring digital files I was legally permitted to take. I met privately with Wade, Zinnia, and Archer, extending Integrated's offers, which they all accepted, with varying degrees of shock and delight. By 6:45 p.m., I was dressed for dinner at the Lotus, a sleek black dress, pearl earrings, hair swept into a polished updo, the perfect picture of a newly promoted executive ready to join the leadership ranks. The restaurant's private room held the entire executive team, all performatively jovial despite the lingering tension. Renee avoided eye contact. Griffith played the gracious leader, pulling out my chair at his right hand, a visible symbol of my new status. Even Vesta was there, her smile brittle as glass, clearly under orders to demonstrate there were no hard feelings. "Before we begin," Griffith announced, raising his champagne glass, "a toast to Marlowe, the true architect of our revolutionary client retention strategy. Your brilliance deserves recognition, and we're fortunate to have you on our leadership team." Everyone lifted their glasses. "To Marlowe," I smiled, touching my glass to my lips without drinking. "Thank you all. This acknowledgement means more than you know." Griffith looked relieved. The crisis, he clearly thought, had been averted. Expensive meals were ordered. Strategic discussions began. They included me in ways they never had before, soliciting my opinions, nodding at my insights. The performance was almost convincing. Halfway through the main course, I checked my watch. "If you'll excuse me for just a moment." In the restaurant's lobby, I met the courier I'd arranged. I handed him envelopes for each executive, then returned to the private room. "Sorry for the interruption," I said, resuming my seat. 3 minutes later, the maître d' entered. "Excuse me, I have urgent deliveries for everyone at this table." Griffith frowned. "We're in the middle of dinner." I was instructed that these must be delivered immediately. The envelopes were distributed around the table. Confusion rippled across faces as they opened them. Inside each envelope was a simple card reading, "Check your email now." Phones emerged from pockets and purses. I watched their expressions transform as they read the company-wide email that had just been sent from Leandro's account to every employee at our firm. "Dear valued industry colleagues, I'm pleased to announce that Integrated Solutions has hired Marlowe as our new Chief Strategy Officer, effective immediately. We recognized her groundbreaking work on client retention strategies and offered her a position that truly values her contributions. I'm equally delighted to welcome Wade, Zinnia, and Archer to our team. These exceptional professionals will help implement Marlowe's vision across our organization. We at Integrated Solutions believe talent should be recognized, credited, and rewarded. We look forward to demonstrating the power of this philosophy in the marketplace. Respectfully, Leandro Suarez, CEO, Integrated Solutions." Griffith's face drained of color. "What is this?" I stood slowly, placing my napkin beside my untouched dinner. "My resignation, effective immediately." Actually, I glanced at my watch, effective 90 minutes ago. "You can't do this," Renee sputtered. "I already have." I picked up my purse. "I accepted Leandro's offer yesterday. The paperwork is signed. And yes, I'm taking Wade, Zinnia, and Archer with me." Vesta found her voice. "This is a betrayal." "No," I corrected her calmly. "Stealing someone's work and taking credit for it is betrayal. This is simply business." "We had an agreement," Griffith said, his voice tight. "No, we didn't. I never signed your papers. I never verbally accepted. I merely said I'd see you at the office, which I did." I smiled. "You should be more careful about having sensitive conversations in rooms with doors ajar." I heard every word about shipping me to Singapore in 6 months. The table fell silent. "You were never going to honor our agreement long term," I continued. "You just needed to contain the immediate damage. So I found a better solution, one where I'm valued for more than just crisis management. The client retention strategy belongs to this company," Renee warned. "If you implement it elsewhere." "I won't be implementing that exact strategy," I interrupted. "I'll be implementing the improved version I've been developing privately for the past 2 months. The one that's 27% more effective. The one none of you knew about because you were too busy taking credit for my old work to notice I was creating something better." I reached into my purse and placed 4 thumb drives on the table. "What are those?" Griffith asked warily. "Transition materials for my projects. Unlike some people in this room, I believe in professional ethics. Everything is properly documented, with clear instructions for whoever takes over. I won't leave your clients in the lurch." I moved toward the door, then turned back. "One final thing. Vesta, the award looks lovely on your desk. Keep it. It'll be a reminder of what happens when you build your success on someone else's foundation. With that, I walked out, ignoring the chaos erupting behind me. In the lobby, Wade, Zinnia, and Archer waited, faces alight with nervous excitement. Is it done? Zinnia whispered. I nodded. It's done. Cars waiting outside to take us to our new offices. Imara's there with welcome packages. I can't believe we just quit without notice, Archer said, half horrified, half thrilled. Technically, we gave notice, Wade pointed out, about 30 seconds of it. As we stepped into the warm evening air, I felt lighter than I had in years. Within 3 months, our former company lost 12 major clients to Integrated Solutions. Within 6, Vesta and Renee were quietly let go. Within a year, Griffith stepped down. As for me, I finally received proper credit for my work. My name appeared on industry publications. I spoke at conferences. My team expanded. My strategies evolved. And most importantly, I built a department culture where credit was given where it was due. Sometimes at night, I still think about that moment in the Lotus when they realized what was happening, not with anger anymore, but with clarity. They taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Your work matters. Your recognition matters. And sometimes, the only way to claim your worth is to walk away from those who refuse to see it. If you've stayed with me through this story, I hope it inspires you to value your own contributions and stand up when others try to diminish them. Everyone deserves recognition for their work. Like this video if you've ever had your ideas stolen, comment with your own experience, and subscribe for more stories of workplace justice. Remember, the best revenge isn't just walking away, it's walking towards something better. The morning sun glinted off the glass conference room as Edison slid the tablet across the table. On screen, a grainy image of me entering the Halcyon building last Thursday evening. Not exactly damning evidence, but enough for what they'd already decided to do. We've received concerning reports about your after-hours activities, Edison said, voice neutral but eyes cold. Our employment agreement explicitly prohibits working for another company while employed here. Beside him, Finn's lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. We have a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of betrayal, Arya. I felt nothing. Not fear, not anger, not even surprise. Just a strange lightness, as if gravity had loosened its hold on me. You're terminated, effective immediately, Edison continued. He pushed a termination letter toward me. Security will escort you to collect your things. I didn't argue, didn't try to explain. I simply nodded and said, you're right. I should focus on one position. Their expressions flickered, confusion crossing their features before settling back into professional neutrality. They had expected tears, pleading, maybe anger, not this calm acceptance. What they couldn't see was the weight lifting from my shoulders as I placed my access badge on the table. 3 years of constant anxiety, of carrying an entire company's digital safety alone, evaporating in an instant. Finn cleared his throat, uncomfortable with my composure. We'll need all passwords and access credentials before you leave. I smiled. Everything's documented in the system knowledge base, just as protocol requires. Another lie. The documentation existed, but it was like giving someone a map without a compass, technically complete but practically useless without my contextual knowledge. As security walked me to my desk, colleagues stared, whispered. I packed my few personal items, a ceramic mug, a small plant that had somehow survived 3 years of neglectful watering, a notebook full of system architectures only I truly understood. Arlo, our VP of Technology, watched from his glass-walled office, expression unreadable. He made no move to intervene, though he knew better than anyone what would happen next. When the security guard escorted me through the lobby, spring air hit my face. I breathed deeply for what felt like the first time in years. By the time I reached my car, my phone buzzed with a message from Vega. Still on for 2 p.m.? I typed back, yes, and now I can accept your full-time offer. 3 years of building someone else's empire was enough. 3 years of being the invisible infrastructure that kept everything running while others took the credit. 3 years of warnings ignored, requests denied, promotions passed over. Now it was over, and the countdown had begun. I know you're probably wondering how this story ends. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. If you're enjoying this corporate revenge tale, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Drop a comment with your thoughts so far. Now, let me tell you how I ended up in this situation. My name is Arya Wesley, and until 40 minutes ago, I was the lead network security architect at a Fortune 500 tech company. The only one, in fact. Not by design. There were supposed to be 5 of us. Budget cuts shrunk that to 3, then resignations to 1. Just me. I never set out to become indispensable. That's a dangerous position in corporate America. But with each passing quarter, as my team evaporated and my responsibilities multiplied, I found myself as the sole guardian of a digital kingdom worth billions. It started 3 years ago when I was recruited from a smaller firm. I still remember Arlo's promises during my interview. "We're building a world-class security team," he'd said, eyes bright with genuine enthusiasm. "You'll lead a specialized group focusing on our proprietary systems." The salary wasn't spectacular, but the challenge was irresistible. Building security architecture for cutting-edge technology, working with brilliant minds, I signed immediately. Reality arrived by month 3. The first round of strategic restructuring eliminated 2 senior positions on my team. By month 6, another colleague left for better pay elsewhere. His replacement lasted 4 months before budget freezes, eliminated the position entirely. "Temporary situation," Arlo assured me. "We'll staff up next quarter." Next quarter became next year. Next year became let's reassess after the merger. The merger came and went. Still, just me. Meanwhile, the systems grew more complex. Our client base tripled. The attack vectors multiplied. I built increasingly sophisticated protection measures, working nights, weekends, holidays to keep pace with emerging threats. When I warned about critical vulnerabilities, my emails were acknowledged, but action items mysteriously disappeared from meeting minutes. When I requested additional staff, I was told to prioritize better. When I asked for compensation that matched my expanding responsibilities, I received praise instead of dollars. "You're our rock star," Arlo would say, clapping my shoulder. "Nobody understands these systems like you do." That was the problem. Nobody did understand them. Nobody wanted to understand them. I offered to train others, to document the increasingly Byzantine architecture that had evolved under pressure. The offers were met with nods, smiles, and zero follow-through. Last winter, I prevented a breach that would have exposed millions of client records. Working 72 hours straight, barely sleeping, I identified the intrusion pattern and built a new defense layer in real time. When the crisis passed, I received a $500 gift card and a mention in the company newsletter. The CEO, who took credit for our robust security culture, received a 7-figure bonus. That was when I realized what I had become, not invaluable, but invisible. The infrastructure nobody sees until it fails. I tried one last time, scheduling a meeting with Arlo and the executive team. "Our current security staffing is unsustainable," I explained, showing charts, data, industry comparisons. "We need at least 3 more specialists to maintain this architecture properly." Arlo nodded sympathetically. "After Q4 results," he promised, "we're just in a temporary holding pattern." I'd heard that line for 3 years. Without proper staffing, this system requires continuous maintenance from someone who understands its entirety, I warned. "If I were hit by a bus tomorrow, you'd have serious problems within days, catastrophic ones within weeks." The CFO frowned. "Sounds like we need better documentation, not more headcount." I felt something break inside me. I've submitted comprehensive documentation requests for 18 months. They've been deprioritized every quarter. Uncomfortable silence followed. Then, redirection, postponement, vague promises. I left that meeting knowing nothing would change. And I needed change. My health was deteriorating. My relationships strained by constant work emergencies. Something had to give. Then came the cybersecurity conference in Boston. I wasn't supposed to attend. Travel budgets were frozen. But the organizer was an old college friend who got me a speaking slot on adaptive threat response architectures. The company couldn't refuse the free publicity. That's where I met Vega, head of security for our largest competitor. She caught me after my presentation, impressed by the theoretical framework I'd outlined. "The implementation must be fascinating," she said, eyes bright with genuine interest. "I'd love to hear more about how you've actualized these concepts." We talked for hours, carefully avoiding specifics about our employers. Just 2 professionals discussing theoretical approaches, architecture philosophies, the first real professional conversation I'd had in years. As the conference ended, Vega handed me her card. We could use your perspective on our new security framework. Strictly advisory, weekends only, nothing operational, nothing that would create conflicts. The consulting fee she mentioned exceeded my monthly salary for weekend work, for being valued. I hesitated only briefly before accepting. The work was advisory only, reviewing their proposed systems, not touching their actual infrastructure. Nothing that violated confidentiality. Nothing operational that impacted either company. For 8 weeks, I lived a double life. Weekdays maintaining the digital fortress that protected billions in assets, unrecognized and undervalued. Weekends being respected, heard, and compensated appropriately for my expertise. Then last Thursday, I parked 2 blocks from Vega's office building for our regular meeting. Someone recognized my car, someone made assumptions, someone decided I was dispensable. What they failed to understand, their entire security infrastructure required specialized weekly adjustments that only I knew how to perform. Adjustments I'd tried to teach others, but nobody had time to learn. Adjustments that prevented the exact cascade of system failures I'd warned about repeatedly. As the security guard escorted me from the building, my phone lit up with a message from Vega. Advisory board approved full-time offer. Chief security architect. Triple your current salary. Team of 8. When can you start? I looked back at the gleaming tower where I'd given 3 years of my life. The security guard avoided my eyes, uncomfortable with his assignment. Is it worth it? I asked him quietly. Working for people who discard you this easily? He had no answer, just a practiced neutral expression. But I saw the flash of recognition in his eyes. He understood exactly what I was asking. I texted Vega back. I can start Monday. What my former employers didn't realize as they rushed me out. In precisely 72 hours, during end-of-quarter processing when their data traffic peaked, their entire system would require the specialized maintenance only I performed. The maintenance I'd been begging them to let me train others to do. Not sabotage, not revenge, just the natural consequence of ignoring warnings, of valuing systems over the people who built them. As I drove away, my phone began to ring. Arlo's number. I smiled and turned off the ringer. The clock was ticking. By Friday afternoon, I had signed Vega's employment contract. Chief security architect with a team of 8 specialists, triple my previous salary and equity options. The relief was physical, like putting down a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten what normal felt like. I spent the weekend preparing for my new role, sleeping more deeply than I had in years. No emergency alerts waking me at 3 a.m. No expectations of immediate response, just silence and rest. Monday morning, I arrived at Halcyon headquarters dressed in a new suit. The lobby's soaring ceilings and natural light were designed to impress, but it was the respect that struck me most. We're thrilled you're joining us, Arya, Vega said, giving me a proper orientation tour. Let me introduce you to your team. Team. The word sounded foreign after years of solitary responsibility. 8 security specialists, each with defined roles that complemented one another. They looked at me with curiosity. Not the desperate relief I'd grown accustomed to when appearing to solve the latest crisis. We've heard incredible things about your adaptive security approach, said Ellis, a threat analysis specialist with bright eyes and quick hands. Looking forward to learning from you. By lunchtime, we were deep in animated discussion about their current architecture. They had questions, thoughtful ones. They challenged my assumptions, offered alternatives, built upon my ideas, rather than simply implementing them. This was what collaboration felt like. I'd almost forgotten. Meanwhile, across town, the first warning signs were appearing at my former workplace. I didn't need spies to tell me. The system's rhythms were as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. Monday afternoon would bring the first authentication bottlenecks as the weekly credential refresh cycle tried to execute without the manual override I always performed. By Tuesday morning, log files would begin to overflow, slowing response times. By Wednesday afternoon, exactly 72 hours after my departure, the cascading failures would begin during end-of-quarter processing peak. I felt a twinge of guilt, not for what would happen, I had warned them repeatedly, but for the innocent employees who would suffer alongside those who had made the decisions. My phone buzzed at 4:52 p.m. Monday. Arlo. I let it go to voicemail. Arya, it's Arlo. Look, there seems to be some issue with the authentication servers. Probably just a configuration thing. Call me when you get this. Thanks. His voice was casual, just a small technical hiccup. I deleted the message. Tuesday morning brought 3 more calls from increasingly senior people. By afternoon, the tone had changed dramatically. This is Maeve from the executive office. Our systems are experiencing significant slowdowns. The technical team has been unable to resolve the issue. The CEO has authorized me to discuss terms for your return as a consultant to address these urgent matters. I texted back a single line. I'm focusing on one position now, as suggested. At Halcyon, I was immersed in building something new rather than desperately maintaining something old. My team and I mapped out a security architecture that incorporated the best elements of my theoretical models with their existing infrastructure. Vega checked in regularly but never hovered. How are you settling in? It's strange, I admitted. Having resources, being heard. She nodded. We've all worked at places that didn't value expertise. That's why our retention rate is triple the industry average. Late Tuesday night, my personal email chimed. From Arlo, marked urgent. Critical system failure imminent. Name your consulting rate. Please respond immediately. I closed the laptop without replying. Wednesday dawned bright and clear. At my morning team meeting, we finalized our implementation plan for the new security architecture. The energy was electric. 8 brilliant minds building something together, each contribution acknowledged and valued. My phone began vibrating continuously around 2 p.m. I silenced it during our planning session. When I checked later, I had 17 missed calls and twice as many texts. One from Edison in HR. Legal has reviewed your termination. We may have acted hastily. Please call urgently. Another from Finn. Whatever they're paying you, we'll double it. This is critical. From the CEO himself. National clients losing access to accounts. Regulatory implications. Board meeting in progress. Call immediately. I felt no satisfaction. Just a hollow confirmation of everything I had warned them about. They had built a kingdom on my shoulders, then pushed me away without understanding what would collapse. That evening, as I drove home from my new office, a breaking news alert flashed across my dashboard display. Major service outage reported at leading financial technology provider. Thousands of client accounts inaccessible. No company name yet, but I knew. The mainstream exposure would come tomorrow when clients couldn't access their quarterly reports, when regulators started asking questions, when the stock began to plummet. At home, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving and sat on my balcony, watching the sunset. My phone lit up again, Arlo's number. This time, I answered. Arya. His voice was ragged with exhaustion. Everything's failing. Sequential authentication breakdowns, cascading into the transaction processing layer. Nobody can stop it. I warned you, I said quietly. For 3 years, I warned you. I know. The admission sounded physically painful. Tell me what to do. Any price. I took a slow sip of wine. It's not about price anymore, Arlo. It's about value. We valued you. No, I interrupted. You valued what I produced. Not enough to listen when I told you it was unsustainable. Not enough to staff properly. Not enough to compensate fairly. Not enough to credit honestly. Silence stretched between us. You know what would have prevented this? I continued. Any one person besides me understanding how these systems actually work. Anyone taking 5 minutes to read the warnings I documented in every quarterly review. Anyone listening when I said this exact scenario would happen if I ever left. His breathing was the only response. The recovery procedure exists, I said finally. It's in the disaster documentation I submitted last year. The documentation that was deprioritized because you're handling everything so well, Arya. I ended the call and turned off my phone. Thursday morning, I arrived at Halcyon to find Vega waiting in the lobby. Have you seen the news? She asked, holding out her tablet. The headline was stark. Major tech failure erases billions in market value. Beneath it, a photo of my former company's headquarters. Their entire client database is locked, Vega said. Transaction processing down for 16 hours and counting. The stock has dropped 40% since opening. I felt strangely empty looking at the numbers. This wasn't satisfaction. This was waste. Of talent, trust, potential, caused by short-sighted decisions made by people who wouldn't suffer the worst consequences. They've been calling our executive office, Vega continued, trying to reach you through us. For emergency support? No. Vega's expression was grim. They're threatening legal action, claiming you sabotaged their systems before leaving. My stomach dropped. I didn't. We know, she interrupted. Our legal team has already reviewed your contract and exit procedures. You're clean, but they're desperate and looking for someone to blame. As we walked to my new office, the weight I'd shed began to return. Not from guilt, I had done nothing wrong, but from the recognition that even now, they refused to accept responsibility. My team was waiting, concerned faces tracking my entrance. "Is it true?" Ellis asked. "About your former employer?" I nodded. "Did you really build their entire security infrastructure yourself?" Another team member asked. "Not by choice," I said, "by necessity." Understanding passed between us, the silent recognition of a shared experience. Every person in that room had, at some point, been the unacknowledged foundation others stood upon. "Well," Ellis said finally, "their disaster is educational for us. Let's make sure our systems never depend on any single person, including you, Arya." The simple wisdom of this statement nearly brought tears to my eyes. This was leadership, acknowledging expertise while preventing unhealthy dependency. We returned to our work, designing resilience into every layer of the new architecture. But as morning turned to afternoon, the news grew worse for my former employer. Regulators had launched an investigation. Client defections were accelerating. The stock had dropped another 15%. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, displayed 57 missed calls. The last one came from an unknown number. The voicemail was from the board chair himself. "Miss Wesley, this is Terrence Walsh. The situation has become untenable. The board has removed several executives this morning, including Mr. Edison and Mr. Finn. We recognize the systemic failures that led to your departure. Please call me directly to discuss how we might move forward." I sat with this message for a long time, cursor hovering over the delete button. Part of me wanted to let them continue paying the full price of their decisions. Another part recognized that innocent people, regular employees, clients, were suffering for leadership's failures. At our afternoon meeting, Vega pulled me aside. Their CTO reached out directly. "Apparently, the board fired half the executive team this morning." "I heard," I said. "They're offering an astronomical consulting fee for emergency recovery assistance. 1 day of your time, remotely. No ongoing commitment." I hesitated. "What do you think?" Vega considered carefully. "Professionally, helping them doesn't harm us. Their reputation is already damaged beyond quick repair. Personally, it's your call. You don't owe them anything." As I walked back to my office, Ellis fell into step beside me. "You know," they said casually, "sometimes the most powerful message isn't letting someone fail completely. It's showing them exactly what they lost by letting them see you succeed elsewhere." I stopped walking. "What do you mean?" Ellis shrugged. "If you help them recover, they'll always know 2 things. That you could have prevented their disaster, and that you were gracious enough to help them despite how they treated you. That kind of knowledge changes organizations more than bankruptcy." I considered this perspective as I returned to my desk, where my team was already implementing the security architecture we'd designed together. My finger hovered over Terrence Walsh's number. What would truly constitute revenge in this situation? Letting their systems remain broken? Their company possibly collapse? Or showing them exactly what they had discarded? The answer came as I watched my new team working together, each person's contribution acknowledged, each voice heard. I pressed the call button. "Miss Wesley." Terrence Walsh's voice carried the strained politeness of someone unused to making requests. "Thank you for returning my call." "Mr. Walsh?" I kept my tone neutral. "I understand your company is experiencing technical difficulties." A careful understatement. Based on industry reports flooding in, they were facing a complete system collapse, client data inaccessible, trading platforms frozen, regulatory violations mounting by the hour. Difficulties would be an understatement, Walsh admitted. "Our entire infrastructure has become essentially non-functional. The team cannot resolve the cascading authentication failures." I let silence fill the line, making him continue. "The board has reviewed your employment history and recent termination. It appears serious mistakes were made regarding your warnings and staffing requests." "Yes," I said simply. "They were." More silence. In the background, I could hear raised voices, the chaos of a company in freefall. "We're prepared to offer substantial compensation for your assistance in resolving this crisis. Name your figure." I had considered this moment during my sleepless nights at my former employer. Imagined the satisfaction of rejecting their desperate pleas. But Ellis's words echoed. Sometimes the most powerful message isn't letting someone fail completely. My consulting rate is $50,000 per hour, I said, naming a figure that would have seemed absurd a week ago. 4-hour minimum engagement, payment in advance to my specified account, and I have conditions beyond compensation. Walsh didn't hesitate. Done. What conditions? First, I work remotely. I don't set foot in your building. Understood. Second, I provide instructions only. Your team implements. I won't directly access your systems. That's challenging, but acceptable. Third, I receive a public letter of apology, acknowledging that I warned about these vulnerabilities repeatedly and was ignored. Walsh paused. The legal implications are less severe than bankruptcy, I finished. Fourth, every member of my former team who was laid off receives 6 months severance and positive references. The board would need to. Fifth, I continued, you create and fully fund the security team structure I originally proposed, with market rate salaries and proper management support. Silence stretched between us. These aren't just demands for my benefit, Mr. Walsh, I explained. Without these structural changes, you'll be right back here in 6 months when the next person burns out or leaves. I heard papers shuffling, muffled voices as he conferred with others. We agree to your terms, he finally said. How soon can you begin? Transfer the payment, send written confirmation of all conditions, and I'll start this afternoon. After ending the call, I sat motionless, letting the reality settle around me. Not revenge as I had imagined it, but something more profound. Accountability, change, recognition. Vega knocked on my open door. How did it go? I explained the agreement. She nodded approvingly. Using their crisis to force structural change. Impressive. It's not just about making them pay, I said. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to the next person. Exactly why we wanted you here, she replied with a smile. This approach to their crisis actually aligns perfectly with our next phase. The board has approved our proposal to launch a security consulting division. I looked up, surprised. We've received 17 inquiries since news of their failure broke, Vega continued. Companies terrified they might have the same vulnerabilities. Who better to lead that division than someone who just proved how essential proper security architecture is? The pieces clicked into place. My experience wasn't just valuable here, it was transformative, not just for me, but potentially for an entire industry that consistently undervalued the invisible infrastructure keeping it alive. I'd like you to present the concept at next week's leadership meeting, she added, with a proposed structure and staffing plan. After Vega left, I opened my laptop to prepare for the emergency consultation. Within minutes, my inbox pinged with the payment confirmation and a signed letter agreeing to all my conditions. I sent detailed recovery instructions to my former company's technical team, step-by-step procedures to resolve the authentication cascade failure. Instructions I had actually documented months ago, but that had been buried in unread reports. As expected, questions flooded back immediately. The team trying to implement my instructions lacked contextual understanding of the systems they were attempting to save. For 4 hours, I guided them through the recovery, explaining not just what to do, but why each step mattered, teaching what should have been taught long ago. Midway through, Arlo joined the video call, eyes hollowed from sleepless nights. Arya, he began. I want to. This isn't the time, I interrupted. Let's focus on recovery. By evening, their systems were stabilizing. Authentication flows restored, transaction processing resuming. Too late to prevent significant damage to their reputation and stock price, but soon enough to avoid complete collapse. As our session ended, I delivered one final message to the assembled team. Every system you're working with has documented maintenance procedures and vulnerabilities I identified. Those documents exist in the folders that were deemed low priority for review. Read them, learn them, because building resilience isn't about technology. It's about people understanding what they're responsible for. I closed the laptop and looked out my office window at the sunset painting the city gold. My phone buzzed with a text from Ellis. Teams heading out for drinks to celebrate the new architecture approval. You coming? For the first time in years, I had no alerts to monitor, no systems that would implode without my constant attention. I had colleagues, not dependents, boundaries, not endless obligation. On my way, I replied. 1 month later, I stood in Halcyon's largest conference room, presenting our new security consulting division to the executive team. Behind me, slides displayed the market opportunity created by my former employer's very public failure, and our unique positioning to address it. Every company believes their technical systems are secure until proven otherwise, I explained. Our approach isn't just providing better technology, it's changing how organizations value and structure their security operations. The approval was unanimous. Within days, we began hiring, expanding my team to 20 specialists with diverse expertise. Our first clients were already lined up, companies terrified of suffering the same fate as my former employer. That afternoon, I received an unexpected email with the subject line, "Thank you," from Terrence Walsh. "Miss Wesley, I wanted to personally update you on the changes implemented since your consultation. We've hired the full security team structure you recommended, including a chief security officer reporting directly to the board. Your public letter of acknowledgement ran in today's business section. Most importantly, we've instituted a complete review of all deprioritized documentation from technical staff across the organization, already uncovering critical insights that had been ignored. The cost of these lessons has been steep. Our market value remains 30% below pre-incident levels, and client trust will take years to rebuild. But the cultural change within the organization has been profound. Your impact extends far beyond the technical recovery you guided. If you're ever interested in returning, my door remains open." I closed the email without replying. There was nothing to say. My answer was already visible in industry announcements about Halcyon's new consulting division and my role leading it. 3 months after my termination, I took the stage at the same cybersecurity conference where I'd met Vega. This time, I wasn't speaking as a lone architect, but as the division head of a growing team, presenting our framework for organizational security resilience. In the audience sat former colleagues, including Arlo and the new CSO they'd finally hired. Their expressions as I detailed our client growth, including 5 companies who had transferred their business from my former employer to Halcyon, told me everything. They understood, finally, that what they had lost wasn't just my technical knowledge. They had lost the future I was now building elsewhere. After my presentation, attendees swarmed with questions and business cards. Among them was the new CSO, who waited until others had dispersed. "Your replacement system is impressive," I acknowledged, noting the positive industry reviews their rebuilt security architecture had received. "Built on your foundation," she admitted. "Your documentation was extraordinary once anyone actually read it. You saved them even while leaving." I smiled. "Some lessons can only be learned through consequences." As I gathered my materials, she added, "You know they track your success obsessively now. Every announcement, every client acquisition, measuring what could have been theirs. And there it was, the true revenge. Not their failure, but my success. Not their loss, but my gain. Every achievement at Halcyon was a reminder of what they had discarded. Every innovation my team produced reflected what they could have had if they had listened, valued, supported. The most devastating consequence wasn't the system failure or financial loss. It was watching me build elsewhere what they had prevented me from building with them. 6 months to the day after my termination, Halcyon announced our security consulting division had become the fastest-growing segment of the company, with a client list that included 3 Fortune 100 corporations. The press release featured my name prominently, alongside quotes from clients about our revolutionary approach to organizational security architecture. That evening, Ellis organized a team celebration. 20 brilliant specialists, none overworked, none undervalued, each contributing their unique expertise to something larger than themselves. As we raised glasses, Ellis offered a toast to Arya, who showed us all that the best expertise isn't about knowing everything yourself, it's about building teams where everyone's knowledge is heard. Looking around at these faces, engaged, respected, collaborative, I realized this was the real victory. Not watching my former employer struggle, but creating an environment where talent could thrive, where warnings were heeded, where expertise was valued, where no single person carried an impossible burden. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't making others fail. It's succeeding so visibly that they must forever live with the knowledge of what they lost. And sometimes the greatest revenge of all is simply building the life and career you deserve elsewhere. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. We've all experienced being undervalued or overlooked at some point. Maybe you're carrying an entire department on your shoulders right now, wondering if anyone notices. Remember, Your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it. The right environment is out there, one that values not just what you produce, but who you are. Drop a comment sharing your own workplace experience or how you found your professional home. Your story matters too.